organization owned by the Lerner family. Mike Rizzo, the general manager. Dave Martinez, the field manager. Here they are, one strike away, one out away. 3-2. There it is! The Washington Nationals are world champions for the first time in franchise history.
Good morning, Peterborough. My name is Jim Tubb, and it is time for your Sports Break, broadcasted through the facilities of Trent Radio on 92.7 C Triple FM here in Peterborough, Canada. This show, of course, can be streamed online at trentradio.ca, or you can follow what we're talking about on Twitter at SportsBreakTR. The weather outside today here in Peterborough is 7 degrees and cloudy. If you look outside, it's kind of dull and dreary, and that's just kind of how it is today. And you know why it is like that? It's because the baseball season's over. You know, the World Series ended last week. It's sad here now. But it is still a beautiful day to talk about sports, ladies and gentlemen. And I ask you every time, can you find me a day that isn't a beautiful day to talk about sports? And I don't think you can answer that question, honestly. Nothing wrong with that. It's just the truth. It's as simple as that. And last week, of course, we had on Rachel Cedamaneas, who talked about being a varsity player, varsity athlete at Trent University, and what is that is like playing rugby, what that is like, and how the OUA, which is the league they play in, shaped up this year, and how crazy it was. If you missed that last week, you can find it on our Twitter at SportsBreakTR. Send you to the YouTube link. Great interview, great job. I did a pretty good job interviewing, not gonna lie, not a big deal. She did a great job. It was just a great interview all around. Learned a lot. Always a lot. We're going to try to get more guests maybe here on Trent Radio on Sports Break, but this week, it was the World Series. I don't know what else we could talk about. The Leafs, forget them. I mean, they played in Philadelphia this weekend, went to 11th round of the shootout. Good for them, whatever. They did win. Yep, Andreas Janssen got the goal. They play tonight against the LA Kings in Toronto. But who cares right now? They're not in the World Series. They didn't make the World Series. They didn't win. Former Blue Jay Daniel Hudson got the final out. That's kind of a big deal. In case you're wondering, today, from what I'm going on this, we're just going to focus on the World Series. And then we're going to focus on the MLB offseason, how that's going to try to pan out, and then the Blue Jays and what their offseason is going to look like. Obviously, they've started their offseason yesterday acquiring Chase Anderson. Oh, man, that's a tough start. Chase Anderson, yeah. I almost said Chris. Chase Anderson, of course, for Chad Spanberger, I'll say is his name. The first baseman they got in the Sung Young Oh trade to Colorado. Big names, early morning. Like I said, the World Series. It was a great, went to 7 games. I don't know how much better a World Series can get than that. Like a sweep. No one wants to watch a sweep in the World Series. That's just not fun. Unless you're the fan of the team that's winning, you don't want to enjoy the sweep. For me, I wanted the Nationals to win. I kind of thought they would, maybe. And they did. Excuse me, so I was right. Obviously, I'm an expert. I'm waiting on my call from MLB Network, ESPN, Sportsnet to get a job. Just because I had a feeling, and my gut's kind of right usually. Now, going into it, there's a series as a whole. Many ways we can do this, and we're going to go game by game, kind of, not in depth, because some of these games happened a long time ago. Game 1, Game 2 were the 22nd and 23rd. Obviously, we know the Nationals jumped out to that 2-0 lead, and that was huge. They beat Garrett Cole and Justin Verlander. Impossible. And they beat them in the second game 12-3. Sorry about that. And then Game 3 and Game 4, of course, back in Washington, the first games of the World Series ever in Washington. They lost 4-1 and then 8-1. And it was just kind of okay. Well, they'll go to Game 5, still in Washington. Scherzer will win this game. Scherzer will pitch great. And then we'll go to Houston with the lead and have 2 games to win it. Scherzer wakes up the morning of Game 5 and can't even move. His back is dead. and he just can't move. I think I called him a dead fish in the last episode. I don't remember what I called him. It was a tough take, but yeah, he couldn't move, and then threw in Joe Ross, who, no fault to his own. Like, I believe he's a rookie, and comes into this game, hasn't pitched in a while. They lose, obviously. Garrett Cole on the mound, and then they go back to Houston, Game 6 and Game 7, and they have to win. And they're facing Justin Verlander, who is really good this year, is a Cy Young candidate, and is like a top 3 Cy Young. They released it yesterday. Verlander, Garrett Cole, and Charlie Morton is the third one. Probably going to be Garrett Cole. But, yeah, they're facing Justin Verlander. Strasburg on the mound, Game 6. Washington wins it 7-2. Sets up Game 7. And we know how that ends. Scherzer starts. Gets through 5 innings. Barely. Said he was fine. I don't know. He didn't pitch great, I'll be honest. He struck out 3 batters. He allowed 7 hits, including 1 home run. He had 4 walks. Like, he just didn't have a clean inning. Every inning he had runners on, runners in scoring position, and it felt like he was working from behind the whole game. And, like, at one time, sitting there watching, you're like, what is Dave Martinez doing right now? How is he letting, like, how is Scherzer still in this game? I know a lot of times I was like, oh, okay, I guess Scherzer's going to come out here. Like, it's a good thing the game was in the American League. I think that really impacted the way Scherzer stayed in the game, because if it was not, and they were in Washington per se, I think Scherzer would have been out of that game sooner. So what does that do for the Nationals? Who knows? Like, it is that is an interesting thing, because Scherzer stayed in 5 and looked okay. And then the Nationals had the weapon of bringing Patrick Corbin in out of the bullpen, who went 3. Looked pretty good in the game, I thought. I don't think he only gave up 2 hits, like 3 strikeouts. Not a big deal, but shut down. He didn't become Madison Bumgarner, but he did a really good job. And then, of course, they brought Daniel Hudson in. For the save. They easily could have left Patrick Corbin in, and he could have kept pitching. But whereas over on Houston, Zach Greinke was pitching great, and he was through 6 1/3. He gave up the home run in the 7th inning. I believe it was wasn't to Juan Soto. It was to Anthony Rendon. And then Soto came up and walked. And then A.J. Hinch pulled him, brought in Will Harris, and then Howie Kendrick hit his home run, lost them the game. And then he rolled out Osuna for an inning and a half, or an inning and a quarter. Then Ryan Presley for a batter, Joe Smith for a batter, and Jose Urquidy, I think is how you pronounce his name, for 2/3 of an inning. Yeah, I don't have the way to say his name. Jose Urquidy, who pitched well in the World Series, but just didn't. I don't know. He was just there to shut out the game, essentially, to get Houston back to the bats. But, like, I don't know why. A.J. Hinch pulled Zach Greinke when he did. A lot of people are questioning that, and I think it's going to be a question for a long time. And it's become the new norm with analytics and everything. And this is so cliche when I say it like that. A lot of people say it like that, though. Like, oh, with analytics, this, and this happens. Back in the old days of baseball, that never happened. And it is kind of true. If you look at the 2014 San Francisco Giants, they just put in their best pitchers. Madison Bumgarner pitched, I believe it was Game 1, Game 4. I can look it up. But, like, he essentially they put in their best pitchers when they needed it. Bruce Bochy did. And that is a old school manager. And it makes sense. Of course, he's retiring this year. That has nothing to do with it. But to think that, well, Greinke kind of, like, he walked some guys, and you want him out. Okay, you can kind of get that, I guess. But you can't, like, you're taking out your best pitcher to put in. Who was your best reliever? I'll give you that. Will Harris was their best reliever. But he was gassed. He'd pitched a lot through the postseason. And A.J. Hinch admitted that before the game and after the game. If he's gassed, why is he in that game? I get that you need to win, but come on. You only, like, there's no one else you trust. You didn't want to put Osuna in there. Because at that point, you also have this weapon of Garrett Cole in the bullpen. And you get Osuna to get out of the 7th. Cole goes 2 innings. Rings for everybody. That's how I would have maybe done it. AJ Hinch also is the manager for the Astros, and I'm just sitting on the couch watching the game. Two different ways of looking at the game. I don't know. I guess he wanted to save. It sounded like he didn't want to put Osuna in the last inning. So if Osuna wasn't going to go in the last inning, maybe he's a guy, Osuna I'm talking about, that only works well with clean innings. To explain that, like a clean inning is you come onto the mound, there's 0 out. Usually there's 0 outs, nobody on base. Not even 0 out, just nobody on base. That way you don't have to worry about having a runner on and like changing your motion and stuff like that, like changing the way you pitch. It works a lot better for most pitchers. A lot of relievers kind of you get used to coming out of the stretch, which is how you pitch when there's a runner on base. Starters, you always, if you're going to bring them out of the bullpen, which doesn't happen as much, you want to make sure that they have a clean inning, because then that's how they pitch as a starter. You come out to a new inning and it's clean. It's perfect. But it's Garrett Cole. Best pitcher in baseball. You just run him out there and you let him be him. Like, don't worry about, oh, well, doesn't have a clean inning. I hope it's going to be okay. You're trying to win a baseball game. Just get him out there. I don't know. That's how I saw it, and it kind of, I know a lot of people saw it that same way. I'm not special here. It just wasn't. I don't think the bullpen was well managed by AJ Hinch. I don't think the whole game as a whole was well managed. By AJ Hinch. Like if we look back to the 2014 World Series with the Giants, Tim Hudson started the game, went 1 2/3, 3 hits, 2 runs. Jeremy Affleck went 2 1/3, gave up 1 hit out of the bullpen, and then Bumgarner came in for 5 innings, faced 17 batters, and shut the Royals down. Why didn't Houston kind of look at that, like put Greinke in? Greinke goes 5, goes 6 maybe, Cole goes 3. I would have done that. Greinke goes 5, because Greinke hadn't had a great playoffs, but he had a great game. He had the chance to win them the game. Like 6 2/3, 2 hits. Like he was having a really, really good night. Not striking out a whole bunch, but having a good night. And I think they just took him out too soon, and it really messed with the team and the game. And now Washington won the World Series. It's as simple as that. And Scherzer's the hero now, when he maybe could, like, I don't know if he would have never not been the hero, but in the same way you could say Washington won the World Series, which they did. Don't ever take that away from them. You can never take that away from them. Houston blew this season. Blew this series, blew everything. They had 107 wins in the regular season. They had one of the best teams. Yordan Alvarez, going to be Rookie of the Year. It's not Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Shut that down right immediately. Right now. It's just not going to be Vlad. It's going to be Yordan, who, like this 22-year-old who's had an amazing rookie season, but he couldn't perform in the play. Like, I don't know if it was because he was a rookie or what, but he just didn't seem like he was there. Or maybe I'm wrong. In the ALCS, he had an 0.45 batting average. In the World Series, he had a 4.12. So I'm totally wrong. But, like, he just never seemed to be there. It's kind of like watching hockey right now in the Leafs. You watch the game and you're like, is Austin Matthews dressed tonight? Because you don't know. Because he doesn't play. They're not playing like he's dressed. Yordan Alvarez, to me, just didn't seem like he was there. And I don't know what happened in the World Series. To sum it all up, the Astros looked human in the World Series. In a playoff that they had looked like superior. They looked like gods, essentially, all season. And then, like, they just become human, and the pitching, that was the big thing, was that they could get to Garrett Cole, they could get to Justin Verlander, something a lot of teams weren't able to do yet, and that cost them, because after Justin Verlander and Garrett Cole, it dropped down immediately to Zach Greinke, who, don't get me wrong, very good starting pitcher. He's not Garrett Cole or Justin Verlander. I know it sounds silly, but, like, he's not. And I think that really hurt them, is the lack of depth for starting pitching. I mean, top 2, amazing. They had the best 1-2 punch of starters. But if you look at the Nationals, they had 3. And that's what the Astros tried to do. They tried to trade for Greinke. They got him. And they're like, this is going to be our 3 guy. And he just didn't live up to it. and now he's going to be their 2 guy behind Verlander. And looking at the beginning of their season next year, those are 2 very old starters. And Zach Greinke isn't what he used to be. Zach Greinke's a very good pitcher, though. Don't get me wrong there. But he's not what he used to be. And they're going to probably lose Garrett Cole to free agency. It looks like it. I mean, after the game, he was wearing a hat for his agent instead of wearing... Sorry about that. An article just started playing. After the game, Garrett Cole came into the locker room and took off his Astros hat and put on a Scott Boras, who is his agent's hat, like with his logo, and tried to get out of talking to the media because he said, I'm no longer employed for the Houston Astros. I'm a free agent. I have no contract. Like, man, just talk to the media. Just, like, I don't know if it's because I'm media, and I'm just like, just talk to us, please. But, like, that's a tough look on a guy, honestly. He comes out of a game, you lose. Garrett Cole should have been in the game. He wasn't. He knows that. Everybody knows that. So he's a little mad. You can get that. But I bet you in 5 years, Garrett Cole looks back on that and goes, man, I really wish I didn't do that, because it kind of paints him in a bad light, that he wasn't team first there. He was worried about himself. And a guy going into free agency where he's looking for teams that are going to pay him $30 a year. $30 a year. Yeah, I wish. $30 million a year. Like, and you're going to show them that if you lose, you're going to sulk and put on your agent's hat and not your Astros hat. Like, if you have to, don't wear a hat then. Like, if you feel so against wearing a team's hat because, I'm not under contract, don't wear a hat. And don't make a huge spectacle of it wearing your agent's hat. Like, come on. He's 20. Like, I think he's 29. Like, I don't know. Me as a 20-year-old, you don't do that. He's 29 years old. Smarten up. I don't know. Like for me, that maybe means nothing. But come on. Like, use your head. And it shows that Garrett Cole right now is all about the money. And wherever he goes, it has nothing to do with there. If he went to a Yankees game as a kid, who cares? They gave him the most money. Angels, maybe it's close to home. Who cares? Money. It looks like that's all he's going for right now. And you know what? Good for him. He can get it. He had an amazing year. He's had an amazing couple years here. Probably going to win the World Series. But, like, it's just not a good look on a guy. I don't know. In my opinion. The World Series did produce other things other than Garrett Cole not wearing a hat and people making a big deal about it. Me making a huge deal about it. A lot of questions and lessons came out of it. Because immediately after a team wins the World Series, any kind of championship in any league, teams look at them and go like, so how can we do that to win? It's happening in the NBA right now. Teams are starting to use load management more, like the Raptors did for Kawhi. The Clippers are doing it for Kawhi. And it's a good idea in the NBA. I understand it. In the NHL, I don't know why they don't do it. I don't think they ever will. It's just become, the NHL is just too much like, let's not change the past. And nothing against the NHL. Well, some things against the NHL on that. But, yeah, you'll never see load management in the NHL. And it kind of happens in baseball. Especially happens in baseball with the Nationals. If you look at Steven Strasburg in 2012, if you can remember that far back, they had a controversy where it was Strasburg's kind of first big season. They were working towards the playoffs, the Nationals were, and they had their reasons to either slow him down or shut him down. Excuse me. And there was no real like they didn't know what to do. They're like, I think the inning limit was 160, and they were like right there. And they're like, okay, well we could go over it and hope for the best and like not give them hard innings, hopefully. But you can't bet on that. And they shut him down, and they didn't. Of course, they didn't win in the playoffs that year, or I don't know if they made the playoffs that year. But they got a lot of like grief for that, and people weren't happy with that. And they still bring it up. They still brought it up a lot of times. Was that the right move for Steven Strasburg? And it looks like it was now because he was the World Series MVP for them, and he looked amazing. So to say, 7 years ago, quick math, they shut him down and gave him half a season's rest or a quarter of season's rest. Maybe that made all the difference. We don't know. But it definitely didn't hurt because he just won the World Series. Now, he did just opt out of his contract and is a free agent. It looks kind of like he's going to sign back or go home and sign in San Diego. Like he's from near San Diego. But like they won their World Series. They're happy with that. How can you not be happy with that? And there's going to be a lot of teams, I feel like, in the future are going to do that. Like San Diego and Oakland, they have two guys. San Diego has Mackenzie Core. Oakland has Jesus Luzardo. Last year was their first real season. This year, they got to kind of monitor the fatigue, make sure they don't get too tired. It's going to be the Blue Jays probably with Nate Pearson when he comes up. It's going to be like, all right, fans love this guy. We love this guy. Let's not overwork this guy. Because it's great if he performs now when they're not going to make the playoffs, this and that, or they're kind of close. You want him full health when they make the World Series, like the Nationals did here with Steven Strasburg. And I don't know how you can be mad at that. Like, it was a great move by them, smart move in the past, and I think we're going to see it a lot more coming out. We also learned in the World Series with bullpens. If you remember, of course, I talked about the Royals earlier, the 2015 team. They had an amazing bullpen. Kelvin Herrera, Wade Davis, Greg Holland. Like, that top three was heck to get through. You look at Cleveland with Andrew Miller, Cody Allen, all these guys coming out of the bullpen. And a lot of teams win with their bullpen. The Nationals did not. They had Daniel Hudson and they had Sean Doolittle, and that was about it. And Patrick Corbin coming out of the pen. Like, this team should not have won the World Series. They were talked about all years. This team is not good enough to win the World Series. Their bullpen is not good enough. All they have is a starting rotation and a decent lineup. And apparently that's all it took. I can't imagine that any team should try that again. I don't recommend to any team that should try that again. Because that is just, like, it's a flash in the pan. Kind of like St. Louis. The St. Louis Blues being last in the league and then winning the Stanley Cup. Next year, it's probably going to be a team with an amazing bullpen that's going to win the World Series. Or maybe the best rotation is going to win the World Series. We don't know. It changes every year. Like, that Kansas City team had the best bullpen and played small ball the entire time. The Giants won because they had Madison Bumgarner. The Red Sox won because they had an amazing lineup and Chris Sale. It changes every year. The Houston Astros, when they won, they just had an amazing lineup. It's as simple as that. And like Charlie Morton and Justin Verlander. It changes every year. And same with all sports. It changes every year. And everyone tries to replicate it, and it doesn't work. But, yeah, it's just, that's one thing you definitely can't replicate is, we won't spend any money on our bullpen, and we'll win with that. No, probably not going to happen. But the last trend center on the Nationals was, like, this was a really old baseball team. And that's another thing that you don't see a lot, and you probably won't see again for a while, is this team that was so old, but they won against a pretty decent young team in the Astros. Like, Fernando Rodney was 42. Daniel Hudson, 32. Abdul Cabrera, 33. Ryan Zimmerman, of course, the first player ever drafted by the Washington Nationals, was 35. And the list goes on and on and on. Howie Kendrick was 36, and he hit the walk-off he hit the final home run in the National League Championship Series, and of course in the World Series. And it was that was their story, was these are the old guys, and for us, that makes us better. And for them, they knew their role as an old player. And the younger guys, I'm just sorry, I don't know why I'm rambling here. It was noted in the World Series that the old guys looked like they were having more fun. And a lot of former players who broadcast now said to win, you have to have fun. Make the game fun. You can't just be there to win. And it kind of like the way the Astros talk to reporters, Buster Olney of ESPN said this, that they seemed to just be there to win the World Series and they didn't want to play baseball. If that makes sense, good. If not, essentially, they believe that like our only job is to win the World Series. If we don't do that, it's a failure. That's what we're here for. That's all we're aiming towards. Where the Nationals were more happy to be there, and they were happy to play baseball, do their best, and then eventually win the World Series. And it's a different mindset of just having fun playing the game. You play better, you play looser, and it just gives you a better product than playing tense. You're gripping the bat a little tighter. We're down by 1. Let's get a 2-run home run right here. Runner on base, of course. And maybe that's the difference between Houston and Washington. We might not know. Maybe it'll come out at the beginning of the season. Some of the Astros players will be like, yeah, we played a little too tense, and we're not going to try that again. That is a team. I know they're going to be a good baseball team, so it makes sense. But that, for me, is a very interesting team to watch out for next year. Because they're mad. They're going to be real mad, I feel like. So they're going to want to play with vengeance. And maybe they're going to come back and maybe they'll win next year. I don't know. But that's a team I would watch out for next year. If you're going to go to Vegas and place some future bets, I would place a bet on the Astros. That's just me, though. But, yeah, heading into the offseason now from the World Series, there's a lot of players heading into... It was 131 players opted for free agency. Garrett Cole, of course, is one of them who had an amazing World Series. 172 ERA and 5 starts through the playoffs. Like, he was great. 11.59 Ks per 9. Steven Strasburg, his 6 games, 5 starts. He had a 1.9 ERA. He was amazing. Anthony Rendon could have been easily the MVP for the for the Nationals. I believe in like the 7th inning or later, he would have like doubles and home runs, no outs. But like, it was a team. I forgot to mention that. It was a team that performed great late. So you're watching the game early, and you're like, man, these guys might not win this game. But you had to wait until the 7th, 8th, 9th inning, like every game, but especially this game, to see, oh, okay, can they come back? And I don't want to spoil it, but they did come back, and they won it. And that's just kind of how it went, is the Nationals were this late inning team to win. Like, I guess most postseason teams are, but especially the Nationals, it felt like. Now, for their offseason, they declined the $18 million option for Ryan Zimmerman. Of course, he's been there since the franchise was founded in Washington, or moved to Washington. He's going to get $2 million from that. It sounds like they're just going to rework the deal to get him a deal again. Hopefully he stays a National. I don't think he'd go anywhere else. They turned down the $9 million option on catcher Yan Gomes, who, of course, was drafted by the Toronto Blue Jays. It sounds like maybe he'll go back, but on a cheaper deal. And then they picked up the options on Sean Doolittle and outfielder Adam Eaton. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting offseason for the Nationals for sure. They have to get Steven Strasburg signed, Anthony Rendon. It sounds like they want to try to re-sign both, which would make a lot of sense. I don't know why you wouldn't. And then for the Astros, I don't know what you do. If you try to go for Garrett Cole, bring him back, or what? Because I think they need to address the starting rotation. Nothing wrong with it, but like, it's not deep enough in my opinion. Maybe work with the bullpen a bit. I don't know what else they can do, honestly. Like, they had a really good team. They just lost. And as crappy and as weak as that statement is, sometimes you just lose the World Series and you can't control it. And it's as simple as that. And if you're an Astros fan, I'm really sorry, that doesn't help. If you're a fan of sports, you're probably like, this guy's crazy. What do you mean? Like, it just happens. Sometimes in sports, and especially baseball, it just happens. And it just happened that the Washington Nationals won their first World Series. It's as simple as that. We'll be right back here, ladies and gentlemen, for your Sports Break. We are back here, ladies and gentlemen, for your Sports Break on 92.7 C Triple FM, broadcasted through the facilities here at Trent Radio in the beautiful Peterborough, Canada. I cut the song off early. I know. Sorry if you really like the song. Of course, it's Brett Kissel. Hockey, please come back. We got a lot to talk about, honestly, with the MLB offseason coming up. We're in it right now. It's starting. Hold your pants. Keep your pants on. It's getting kind of like stuff's happening. And right now it's kind of preliminary. Like, there's no signings or anything. But it's all like options. Which, if you're not really into it, like if you don't know the ins and outs, I'll say the options are in your contract. In baseball, you have to have 6 years in the MLB before you're a free agent. It's as simple as that. So in your first couple years, you just renew your contract. You essentially just take what the team gives you. Then you have arbitration rights, which means if you don't like what the team's offering or the team doesn't like what you're offering, you go to a third-party arbitrator, and he can tell you based on your stats what the team offers and what they say about you and what you say about the team, this and that. They get kind of like mean. Teams try to avoid arbitration. This third-party arbitrator then decides what you're going to make, and that's as simple as that. And then in your contract, after that, you can work in options. So you sign a 4-year contract, say at $20 million each year, and then your 5th year, you'll have a team option, which means if the team wants to, they can pick up the option. You can have a player option, which means if the player wants to stay that 5th year, they can choose. Or you have a mutual option, which means you pick up the side and they pick up the side. And if one party doesn't pick up the side, then it gets terminated. Makes sense? I hope so. So saying that, the Yankees didn't have failed to offer Didi Gregorius. I forgot the qualifying offer, which means if it's a player after his 6 years of service time, if he spent the past season with the team, the full season, you can offer them a qualifying offer, which means it's set on a percentage of the average of MLB players' earnings last year. So I believe it's $17 million this year, $17.8 million this year. And if a player accepts, they'd receive that salary in the form of a 1-year deal. If they decline, they become free agents, and then they have a draft pick attached to them, so that if, like, let's say it's a perfect one, Madison Bumgarner, he was offered a qualifying offer, he turned it down. If the Blue Jays sign Madison Bumgarner, tough start, then they owe the Giants a first round draft pick, or a draft pick. I don't know if it's first round still. If that kind of makes sense, it should make sense. So if you look at that, like Steven Strasburg, Anthony Rendon, of course, got theirs. Marcell Ozuna, Josh Donaldson with the Braves, Madison Bumgarner, like I said, with the Giants. Qualifying offers are kind of like a big deal because it's a draft pick, and it adds up. Baseball, of course, doesn't have the same draft as hockey, whereas like you're going to get a guaranteed good player usually. Baseball, it's more hit or miss. So a draft pick, yes or no. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Yankees didn't offer Didi Gregorius a contract. It's a big deal right now. That's their shortstop. It'll be Gleyber Torres, maybe, if he doesn't re-sign. JD Martinez will not opt out of his deal with the Red Sox, which is a huge deal. So the next 3 years, he'll make $62.5 million. He does still have an opt-out after next year and the year after that. So that narrative won't go away. But if he would have opted out, he's 32 years old, and he would have been probably one of the top 2 bats on the market. But honestly, for him, why not stay? The Royals declined Alex Gordon, who might retire. He actually just won the Gold Glove last night. Was announced that he was the Gold Glove winner, but they didn't re-sign him. So, kind of a tough look on him. But I don't this offseason. There's a lot to go on. The Gold Gloves were announced last night. Neither of the Blue Jays won. Danny Jansen and Justin Smoke were both up for a Gold Glove, and it kind of would have been cool to see both, either of them win. See a Blue Jay win a Gold Glove, but it didn't happen. Last one we saw was Marcus Stroman, of course, and it's I don't want to say who cares, but that was a long time ago. And the offseason, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of free agents. I'm not going to list names or anything like that. The MVP and the Cy Young voting came out. I guess the big one with free agency, we've got the rest of the season of SportsBreak to talk about who is going to make it to, who's going to sign where. Because right now we just don't know. It's way too early in the season, or way too early in the offseason. But that was the big thing, was the opt-outs. I wanted to get that and explain qualifying offers, because you're gonna see it on the sports news a lot over the next little while of qualifying offers and stuff like that. But for the awards, the standout, the NL Cy Young, it's DeGrom, Hyung Jin Ryu, and Max Scherzer. We knew that. The AL Cy Young, we knew. NL MVP has been a talk all year of, is it going to be Cody Bellinger, Christian Yelich, or maybe it's Anthony Rendon? Probably going to be Bellinger, in my opinion. AL MVP is going to be Mike Trout, who missed the last month of the season, Alex Bregman, or Marcus Semien. And then the AL Rookie of the Year, it's going to be Yordan Alvarez. Vlad not even making it on the list. Kind of sad, but he had a tough year. And then the NL, it's going to be Pete Alonso. He hit 52 home runs. How can it not be? It's just the manager of the year. It's probably going to be the Twins, Rocco Baldelli, and in my opinion, it should be Craig Counsell with the Brewers. Just everything he dealt with this year with the Brewers. But for the Blue Jays, of course, yesterday was the start of the offseason officially, because they made a trade, and it kind of caught a lot of people off guard in the fact that they made a trade, if that kind of makes sense. I was caught off guard, I should say. Maybe everyone else wasn't. But they acquired, like I said, starter Chase Anderson from the Brewers for Chad Spanberger. That's how you say his name. I said it right the first time. Want to make that clear. And they picked up his being Anderson's $8.5 million option for 2020. Over the past 5 seasons, he's had at least 139 innings, made a minimum of 25 starts, 4.21 ERA. So, but like, it's a Blue Jays team that really needs starting pitching. So you take it, and it's going to work out. It's as simple as that. You just need starting pitching. And right now they've got Trent Thornton, they've got Ryan Baracki if he's healthy, Matt Shoemaker, Chase Anderson now, and then you fill in from there. And I could see them signing a couple more guys. They still don't have that top of the rotation guy yet. Nate Pearson's going to come up, but when he does, I don't know what role he's going to go in. They can't put him in the top of the rotation yet. But yeah, they got a starter in Chase Anderson. And this is just the start of the offseason. There's a lot more to do for them. But they got rid of a couple familiar faces. They designated reliever Ryan Tepera for assignment, which means they have 10 days to decide whether it immediately removes him from the 40-man roster. We're getting really deep into baseball here. They removed him from the major league roster, sent him down to the minors, and they haven't sent him down yet. They have a couple days to decide what they're going to do with him. And then they sent Devin Travis to AAA Buffalo, who Devin Travis hasn't really played a game for the Blue Jays in a couple years now. Tepera, of course, last year missed 3 months due to a right elbow impingement. Didn't really look great the whole season. He's arbitration eligible, and if he clears waivers, he'll probably go to Buffalo. I don't know if he's going to be on the Jays next year, probably, just because they need the bullpen help. They'll probably do what they do every offseason now and sign some bullpen guys just to come in and fill the spots so they can trade them at the deadline. I'd like to see them sign a couple guys that maybe stay, because you're getting close to the point where you need to win. So, like, why not keep a couple guys that are good? Then I also follow that up with you should maybe try to trade Ken Giles, because you can get a lot for him now with their oldest Chapman not opting out. There's a lot that can happen this offseason with the Blue Jays. And, like, a lot of people are rumoring Edwin Encarnacion should come back to the Jays. I just don't know. Like, first base, I wouldn't tie it up with Edwin, and to be a DH for what? Like, would it be good optics? Yeah, because you're bringing in a Blue Jay, a former Blue Jay. But, like, at what point? Like, you're not going to win this year, and I don't even know if Edwin would want to sign. But, like, he's rumored to Tampa, who's actually, like, can make a playoff spot. But, like, for what it's going to cost and what he's going to bring, it's just going to be home runs. And I know that sounds silly because you want home runs to win games. But I don't think they're there yet. And maybe that's going to piss a lot of people off. But I don't think that's the right move for the Toronto Blue Jays. And a lot of people do. And that's their opinion. Again, we're not the GMs, so we don't know yet. The one guy I'd love to see them bring in and who they're interested in is Japanese first baseman and outfielder. Oh, I should have looked at this before. Yoshitomo Satsugo? Yoshimoto is what I'm going to call him when he signs with the Blue Jays. You got to be hopeful. Of course, like kind of like Shohei Ohtani, he's got to be posted to become an MLB player, but he wants to be an MLB player. He turns 28. Last year, he hit 29 home runs in 131 games. Not his best season, which was 2016 when he hit 44 home runs. He really wants to come play in the majors. Toronto's, I don't know if it's close to Japan. They always talked about that with Shohei. It was like, oh, it's kind of like near. It's closer than some teams. Minori Kawasaki enjoyed his time here, so maybe that helps. It'd be really cool to see a guy like this come to Toronto. In my opinion, it might take the focus away from Vlad and the young guys, which might help them in the long run. And it just show that, hey, a player actually wants to come to the Toronto Blue Jays and be a part of the Toronto Blue Jays. That's amazing, because we don't get that a lot. But yeah, like I said earlier, the offseason, there's just a lot to happen in the offseason right now that we don't know what can, I'm rambling right now, you can tell. And there's just only so much you can do right now and look at right now for what what this offseason is going to look like for the Blue Jays and the MLB as a whole. If you're the Blue Jays, there's a lot to address. You have to bring in starters. You have to fix your bullpen. And you have to make sure the young guys are supported. That's the way I see it. That's all I can say right now for the Toronto Blue Jays. And for the MLB offseason, you have to look at the ball and get the baseball figured out. Because this year, with the home runs like crazy during the regular season and then the home runs dying in the playoffs, that's not fair. And I think it kind of ruined the playoffs. But if you're the Nationals, you don't care. And you shouldn't care. The Nationals won fair and square. Simple as that. Looking back on the season now, if sitting here, you think about all the stuff like that happened with Tyler Skaggs, the multiple no-hitters. It was a good MLB season, but the baseball really overshadowed it. And I say good sparingly in respect to the Tyler Skaggs incident. Not the memory of Tyler Skaggs. I say it was a good season. Like they threw a no-no on the first game back, but yeah, like the ball really ruined it in my opinion this season, and for a lot of people I think it did too. But it is the end of the MLB season, and that's sad because it's just another year closed. Yeah, like it's another year. Your team didn't win, this and that. A team did win, and they're happy, and that's all that matters. But like I heard from one of my favorite baseball podcasts, Baseball Tonight, they end the season every year by playing the Green Fields of the Mind from former MLB Commissioner Bart Giamatti. We're going to do that right here. We'll talk at the end. It'll just be the goodbye at the end. But yeah, Green Fields of the Mind by Bart Giamatti.
This little piece was originally written one afternoon as the class notes for the class of 1960 in Yale College. I was the class secretary. I had absolutely nothing to say about my classmates. I wrote what you're about to hear. It was properly and immediately rejected by the Yale Alumni Magazine on the grounds that it was completely irrelevant to the purpose of the class notes. I accepted the judgment cheerfully, and then when unaccountably 2 months later I became president, the Yale Alumni Magazine reprinted it. Remarkable, but not as class notes. It breaks your heart. It is designed to break your heart. The game begins in the spring when everything else begins again, and it blossoms in the summer, filling the afternoons and evenings, and then as soon as the chill rains come, it stops and leaves you to face the fall alone. You count on it, the enclosed green field of the mind. There in that warm, bright place, what the old poet called mutability does not so quickly come. But out here, on Sunday, October 2nd, when it rains all day, Dame Mutability never loses. She was in the crowd at Fenway yesterday, a gray day full of bluster and contradiction. When the Red Sox came up in the last of the ninth, trailing Baltimore 8-5, well, the Yankees, rain delayed against Detroit, needing only to win one or have Boston lose one to win it all, sat in New York washing down cold cuts with beer and watching the Boston game. Boston had won 2, the Yankees had lost 2, and suddenly it seemed as if the whole season might go to the last day or beyond, except here was Boston losing 8-5, while New York sat in its family room and put up its feet. Lynn, both ankles hurting now as they had in July, hits a single down the right field line. The crowd stirs. It's on its feet. Hobson, third baseman, former Bear Bryant quarterback, strong, quiet, over 100 RBIs, goes for 3 breaking balls and is out. The goddess smiles and encourages her agent, a canny journeyman named Nelson Briles. Now comes the pinch hitter, Bernie Carbo, one-time Rookie of the Year, erratic, quick, a shade too handsome, so laid back he's always in his soul, stretched out in the tall grass, one arm under his head, watching the clouds and laughing. Now he looks over some low stuff unworthy of him, and then, uncoiling, sends one out. straight on a rising line over the center field wall, no cheap Fenway shot, but all of it, the physics as elegant as the arc the ball describes. New England is on its feet, roaring. The summer will not pass. Roaring, they recall the evening late and cold in 1975, the sixth game of the World Series, perhaps the greatest baseball game played in the last 50 years, when Carbo, loose and easy, had uncoiled to tie the game that Fisk would win. It is now 8-7, one out, and school will never start, rain will never come, sun will warm the back of your neck forever. Now Bailey, picked up from the National League recently, big arms, heavy gut experience, new to the league and the club, fouls off two, and then, checking, tentative, a big man off balance, he pops a soft liner to the first baseman. It is suddenly darker and later, and the announcer doing the game coast to coast, a New Yorker who works for a New York television station, sounds relieved. His little world, well lit, hot combed, split-second timed, has no capacity to absorb this much gritty, grainy, contrary reality. Cox swings a bat, stretches his long arm, bends his back. The rookie from Pawtucket who broke in 2 weeks ago with a record 6 straight hits. The kid drafted ahead of Freddie Lynn, rangy, smooth, cool. The count runs 2-2, and Cox swings, and the ball beginning toward the mound, and then in a jaunty, wayward dance, skips past Briles, feinting to the right, skimming the last of the grass, finding the dirt, moving now like some small, purposeful marine creature negotiating the green deep, easily avoiding the jagged rock of second base and traveling steady and straight now out into the dark, silent recesses of center field. Well, the aisles are jammed, the place is on its feet, the wrappers, the program, the Coke cups and peanut shells, the detritus of an afternoon, the anxieties, the things that have to be done tomorrow, the regrets about yesterday, the accumulation of a summer, all forgotten, while hope, the anchor, bites and takes hold, where a moment before it had seemed we would be swept out with the tide. Rice is up. Rice, who Aaron had said was the only one he'd seen with the ability to break his records. Rice, the best clutch hitter on the club with the best slugging percentage in the league. Rice, so quick and strong, he once checked his swing halfway through and snapped the bat in two. Rice, the hammer of God, sent to scourge the Yankees. The sound was overwhelming. Fathers pounded their sons on the back, cars pulled off the road, households froze. New England exulted in its blessedness and roared its thanks for all good things for Rice and for a summer stretching halfway through October. Briles threw, Rice swung, and it was over. One pitch, fly to center, and it stopped. Summer died in New England, and like rain sliding off a roof, the crowd slipped out of Fenway quickly, with only a steady murmur of concern for the drive ahead remaining of the roar. Dame Mutability had turned the seasons and translated hope to memory once again. And once again, she had used baseball, our best invention to stay change, to bring change on. That is why it breaks my heart, that game. Not because in New York they could win because Boston lost. In that, there's a rough justice and a reminder to the Yankees of how slight and fragile are the circumstances that exalt one group of human beings over another. It breaks my heart because it was meant to. Because it was meant to foster in me again the illusion that there was something abiding, some pattern and some impulse that could come together to make a reality that would resist the corrosion. And because after it had fostered again that most hungered for illusion, the game was meant to stop and betray precisely what it promised. Now, of course, there are those who learn after the first few times, with the wisdom to know that nothing lasts. These are the truly tough among us, the ones who can live without illusion or without even the hope of illusion. But I am not that grown up or up to date. I am a simpler creature, tied to more primitive patterns and cycles. I need to think something lasts forever. And it might as well be that state of being that is a game. It might as well be that in a green field in the sun. Thanks.
Whew, great poem every time. That is all the time we have today for your Sports Break broadcast on 92.7 C Triple FM through the facilities here at Trent Radio in the beautiful Peterborough, Canada. If you've missed previous shows, you can catch up on Twitter at SportsBreakTR. We'll be back next Tuesday, of course, at 9 a.m. for another show. We'll get into the NHL season, I promise. We've skipped it 2 weeks now. MLB Offseason, we'll talk about what's going on there and with the Blue Jays. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, to check your smoke and carbon monoxide alarms. And have a good day.